They didn't fight for glory. They fought because they had no choice. The year is 1380. The air above the river. Dawn tastes of iron and smoke. Dawn crawls across a silent field called Kulikovo, the field of thousands of men stand in the mist, blades trembling, breath freezing against their beards. Somewhere among them, a young prince hides his royal armor beneath plain steel, choosing to stand as a soldier, not a ruler. His name is Dmitry of Moscow. Before the sun sets, he will change the fate of an entire civilization. Across the field waits Mamai, warlord of the Golden Horde, a man who commands the wind itself. He believes Russia is still broken, still afraid, but this morning, the wind will turn against him. Most people never knew this detail, but before the first arrow flies, two lone riders gallop forward, a monk and a champion, to decide the fate of nations in a single strike. Both will die standing. Both will vanish into legend. What happens next? No historian expected. Before we uncover this forgotten war, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment your favorite ancient battle below. You're about to witness history the way it was never told. Asterisk. Asterisk. The weight of the yoke for sound of hooves echoes across the sleeping plains. The dawn is pale, gray, uncertain, like a kingdom that has forgotten its own name. This is Russia before it was Russia, a land splintered into a dozen rival principalities, each ruled by fear and tribute. The Mongol yoke still grips its throat, and yet, somewhere within the fog, something ancient is beginning to breathe again. The story begins in Moscow. A young prince stands before a table lit by trembling candlelight. Maps sprawl across it like open wounds. His name, Dmitry Ivanovich, not yet Donskoy, not yet legend. He listens to his council argue. One voice demands surrender, another whispers caution, a third, hoarse and desperate, begs for peace at any price. Dmitry says nothing. His eyes trace the thin lines of rivers that cut through their broken land, rivers that carry tribute, east, silver, fur, lives. Each coin cent is another chain around their necks. He knows what the others fear to say aloud. The horde is not a shadow. It is a storm. For 200 years, the steppe has ruled by silence and smoke. The memory of burned cities still stains the wind. Mamai, the warlord of the Golden Horde, is not a king, but something worse. A man who never needs to prove his power, because everyone already trembles before it. And yet, in this small, dim room, Dmitry decides that fear will no longer rule the land. He speaks softly, like a priest breaking a curse. We will fight. The room falls still. No one breathes. To refuse tribute is treason against survival. To challenge the horde is to challenge the wind itself. But in Dmitry's voice there is something new. Something they haven't heard in generations. Conviction. That same night, word rides through the forests and frozen rivers. Messengers gallop through villages, whispering a single name. Moscow. The heart of Rus is calling its children home. In a monastery north of the city, bells toll against the snow. Inside, an old monk waits. His name is Sergius of Radonis, a man whose prayers are said to bend the hearts of princes. Dmitry kneels before him, the young ruler's armor still smelling of iron and rain. Sergius watches him for a long time, then says, "If you go, many will die. But if you do not, your people will die for all time." He gives Dmitry not comfort, but blessing to monks, Paravate and Ozalibia, to ride with him into war. Holy men who trade robes for armor, crosses for swords. When Sergius places his hand on Dmitry's head, the candlelight does not flicker. It flares. This moment, quiet, unseen, becomes the spark that will ignite a nation. Spring turns to summer, and Russia begins to move. Banners rise from every corner, from Tver, Rostov, Suzdal, Yaroslavl, each one stitched with faith, fear, and defiance. Peasants sharpen sickles into blades. Blacksmiths hammer through the night. The air hums with something forgotten. Unity. When Dmitry rides among them, he wears no crown, no golden crest. His armor is plain, indistinguishable. He does not want them to see a prince. He wants them to see a man who stands beside them. Most people never knew this detail. That Dmitry chose to hide his royal insignia before the battle. He wanted no archer to know which man to shoot. But deeper still, he wanted no soldier to fight for his name, only for the land. Meanwhile, far to the south, Mamai watches the horizon from his tent of crimson silk. Maps of conquest lie at his feet, inked in blood and arrogance. He has crushed rebellions before. He expects this one to be no different. But he is wrong. Whispers of betrayal ripple through his empire. His power, though vast, is fracturing. Allies grow restless. Generals trade loyalty for coin. To restore order, Mamai decides to make an example. He will ride north, burn Moscow, hang its prince, and remind the world that the steppe still owns the sunrise. He sends riders to summon mercenaries from Genoa, allies from Lithuania, horsemen from the Caucasus. The horde moves not like an army, but like an approaching storm, unseen until it devours the sky. Back in Moscow, Dmitry's council breaks once more. Some demand that they wait behind their walls. Others plead to retreat deeper into the forests. But Dmitry knows walls cannot stop wind. Only will can. He chooses a different path. A fence. They will march to meet Mamai before he reaches their homes. They will fight not as prey, but as hunters. And so, in the late summer of 1380, the Rus army begins its march south. The earth trembles beneath tens of thousands of feet. Along the roads, women and children stand in silence, watching their husbands and fathers disappear into the distance. No one cries. There are no tears left for fear, only the hard stare of resignation. Nights are filled with prayers, mornings with marching. The men sing low songs that sound like the beating of hearts. Every step carries them closer to the Don River, the edge of the known world. Then comes the first sign. A raven lands on a bare tree before dawn, 'cause once, and flies east. Superstition runs through the ranks like lightning. The old men murmur of omens. Some say it means death, others, rebirth. Dmitry says nothing. He looks toward the east, where Mamai will come, and whispers to himself, so be it. By early September, they reach the Don. The land here is wild and empty, endless grass, mist like breath on the ground. Dmitry studies the terrain. To his commanders, it looks ordinary. To him, it speaks. The river bends like a shield, and on the opposite side stretches a wide field, hemmed by low hills and forest. A place called Kulikovo, the field of Spiros. Most armies would camp behind the river, using it as defense. Dmitry does the unthinkable. He orders his men to cross the Don, to put the river at their backs, cutting off retreat entirely. The council erupts in panic. If the horde drives us back, we drown. One cries, if we fail, there is no escape. Another shouts. Dmitry answers quietly, then we will not fail. This is the moment historians mark as madness. But it is not madness. It is faith turned into strategy. Dmitry understands what his enemies do not. The only way to make men stand unbroken is to take away the path behind them. With no retreat, courage becomes survival. That night, campfires dot the plain like fallen stars. The army eats in silence. Some men write last letters home. Others sharpen blades, already sharp enough. The air is thick with smoke and the scent of fear. In the distance, wolves howl, or maybe it's only the wind across the grass. Perevit, the monk warrior, walks through the camp, murmuring prayers. His presence calms even the hardest faces. Dmitry approaches him and asks quietly, do you fear what comes? Perevit looks toward the fog and smiles faintly. I fear only not standing when I'm called. And this is where everything begins to turn. Before dawn, scouts return. Mamai's host is near. The earth shakes beneath thousands of hooves. The horde stretches across the horizon like a black tide. In their ranks glint the helmets of Genoese mercenaries, the banners of Lithuania, and the endless flutter of steppe riders. Dmitry's men line up on the plain, armor glistening with dew. Between them and the horde lies a thin strip of mist, a no-man's land where fate waits. Then, from the horde's front, a single rider steps forward, a giant of a man, armored in gold and steel. His name is Chelyabet, champion of Mamai. He raises his spear toward the Rus lines and roars a challenge. Perevit rides out to meet him, bareheaded robe flapping like wings of gray cloth. The two meet in the center of the field as the world holds its breath. Their lances lower, horses scream. The impact is so violent that both men collapse dead in the same instant, still in their saddles. Neither side cheers. The duel feels less like victory and more like omen. Two worlds have met faith and conquest, and neither has yielded. But Dmitry sees more than omen. He sees opportunity. He glances toward the tree, where his second-in-command, Dmitry hides with a regiment of horsemen, the ambush force. Hidden by the forest, waiting for the right moment. Mamai doesn't know they're there, not yet. The battle is about to begin. Trumpets cry out. The horde surges forward. A thunder of hooves and arrows that darken the sky. The Rus lines tighten, shields locking, spears bracing. The sound that follows is not war. It's the sound of the earth breaking open. The first wave crashes like a storm. Men vanish beneath the dust. Horses scream. Arrows fall like rain. But the Rus center holds. Dmitry's plain armor is spattered with mud and blood. No one knows he is their prince. Only that the man beside them does not fall. Every heartbeat is a century. The gathering at the dawn. The first light of dawn burns away the mist, revealing what the night had hidden. A battlefield poised on the edge of destiny. The Don River glitters like a blade behind the Russian lines, its cold waters whispering one truth: there will be no retreat. The men of Rus know this. They can feel it in their bones, in the stillness before chaos. Their shields are slick with dew. Their breaths rise together in trembling plumes. Somewhere down the line, a child who lied about his age to join the ranks grips his spear so tightly his knuckles turn white. Across the field, the horizon darkens, not with storm clouds, but with horsemen. The Golden Horde unfurls itself, like a living serpent, its banners snapping in the wind, each one painted with the sigil of conquest. The drums begin to beat, low and steady, like a heart that belongs to no man but to history itself. At the head of the horde sits Mamai, wrapped in silken armor, his eyes sharp as flint. His gaze cuts through the haze to the distant ranks of the Rus, small and unmoving. He smirks. Fools, he murmurs to his lieutenants. They cross the river. They have trapped themselves. By noon, the dawn will drink their blood. He raises his arm. The drums quicken. The steppe comes alive. In the Rus camp, Prince Dmitry stands at the center, surrounded by his boyars and priests. He watches the horizon, the endless line of approaching riders, and feels the ground hum beneath his boots. His heart beats steady, not calm, but resolved. He turns to his men. Brothers, he says quietly, the day has come when we must prove that our land still breathes. No long speeches, no glory-laced promises, just words heavy enough to anchor courage. Beside him, the monk warrior Azlayabia traces a cross in the air, murmuring a prayer for the souls who will soon fall. Behind them, the banners of Moscow and Tver lift together in the morning wind. Separate histories, now bound by one cause. Most people never knew this detail. The Rus army at Kulikovo was not the largest force in Europe, nor even close. It was a patchwork of cities and clans, many of whom had fought one another only years before. But that morning, their rivalries died. Only survival remained. And then, without warning, the sky screams. Thousands of Mongol arrows arc overhead, vanishing into the sun before slamming down like rain. The sound is deafening. A storm of whistling death. Men raise shields, crouch low, feel the vibration of iron striking wood. Some fall silently. Others curse the sky itself. Dmitry does not flinch. He knows this tactic. The storm before the storm. He waits for the second rhythm. The drums, it comes. The thunder of hooves. The dust cloud swelling across the plain. Mamai's first charge. The horde's cavalry surges forward. Their formation perfect. Disciplined chaos. Riders howl their war cries. Arrows flash in the air. Their speed is inhuman. The rhythm of the steppe itself. But the Rus lines stand firm. Shields interlock. Spears rise like a forest of thorns. The first impact is a sound that splits the sky. Iron on iron. Flesh on wood. Bone on earth. The front ranks shudder. A man's spear snaps. Another's helmet cracks like an egg. But the line does not break. The horde pulls back, regrouping. Circling like wolves testing prey. In the shadow of the trees, Dmitry Bobruk-Volinsky waits with his hidden regiment. Horses shift, restless. The air here is cooler, damp with river scent. He can hear the roar of the battle but cannot yet see the field. Every nerve in his body screams to move, to strike, but he waits. Patience is the deadliest weapon in war. Beside him, Vladimir the Bold tightens his reins. If we wait too long, there will be nothing left to save. Bobruk doesn't answer. He watches the dust beyond the clearing, reading it like a book. The horde's lines are stretching, pressing harder in the center, weaker at the flanks. They are biting down too hard. The trap is forming. Not yet, he whispers. Let them think the heart is breaking. Back on the field, Dmitry's men fight knee-deep in blood and mud. The horde's cavalry wheels and dives again, slashing through the Rus wings. Men fall by the hundreds. The banners waver. For every enemy slain, two more seem to rise from the smoke. Dmitry rides along the front, shouting no orders, only words that sound like fire. Hold your ground. This is our river. He feels the tremor beneath his horse, the vibration of thousands of hooves. He looks to his right flank. The horde is pressing hard there, trying to split the formation in two. If they succeed, the battle will collapse. And then, fate plays its cruel hand. A stray arrow whistles through the chaos and strikes the crest of Dmitry's helmet. The impact knocks him from the saddle. He crashes into the mud, the world turning black for a moment. Around him, men scream that the prince has fallen. The whisper spreads like wildfire. The prince is dead. Panic ripples down the line. The horde sees it, the sudden falter, the break in rhythm. Mamai grins from across the field. Now, he says, finish it. The horde surges forward again. But Dmitry is not dead. He stirs, gasping, his vision blurred. The mud on his face makes him just another soldier. Unrecognized, anonymous. He pushes himself up, drags his sword from the dirt, and joins the line once more. No crown, no command, just a man fighting for his home. Most people never knew this detail, that in the heart of the Bloods, the Prince of Moscow fought shoulder to shoulder with farmers and smiths, indistinguishable, invisible among them. The battle grinds on. Arrows are spent. Men fight with daggers, with fists, with broken spears. The air turns to steam, breath and sweat and smoke all mingled. Then comes the turning point. Mamai, seeing the Rus' right flank collapse, throws in his reserves, the heavy cavalry that has crushed countless enemies before. He intends to break the line completely, drive them into the river, and watch them drown. It almost works. The right wing buckles. The Rus center staggers. For the first time, it seems the Horde's victory is certain. But Dmitry Bobruk sees what Mamai cannot. The Horde has stretched itself too far. Its center is thin. Its right overextended. The trap has opened wide. He exhales, steady and low. Now, the forest explodes. From the shadowed tree line, thousands of horsemen burst forth like ghosts made of thunder. Banners of red and white flash between trunks. Hoofs pound, steel glints. The ambush regiment of Dmitry Bobruk and Vladimir the Bold tears across the flank of the Horde like a blade through silk. The steppe riders have no time to turn. Their formation folds inward in panic. Dust and screams fill the air. Horses crash into one another. Mamai's lines twist, collapse, shatter. On the Rus front, men see it, the dark wave of their own cavalry sweeping from the trees, and a roar rises that drowns even the drums of war. Hope, raw and violent, surges through them. Dmitry, bleeding but unbroken, lifts his sword and charges forward. The center surges with him, striking as the ambush crushes the Horde from the flank. The sound that follows is indescribable. The death of an empire's certainty. Mamai's lieutenants shout orders, but no one listens. Chaos devours discipline. Horses bolt in terror. The field becomes a storm of dust and steel. From a hill, Mamai watches his army unravel. The unstoppable machine of the Golden Horde, reduced to a scattering of dying embers. His confidence shatters. He calls for retreat, but even his guards hesitate. The prince of the steppe, the ruler of fear, is now a man alone. He spurs his horse and flees. Behind him, the battle rages 1,000 duels under a dying sun. By dusk, the field of Kulikovo is silent except for the moans of the wounded and the hiss of arrows cooling in the grass. The dawn runs red beneath the twilight. Dmitry stands among the fallen. His armor dented, his face streaked with blood and mud. Around him, men search for their brothers, their sons, their leaders. And then someone shouts, "The prince lives." The cry ripples through the survivors like fire catching dry leaves. They lift their swords, not in triumph, but in disbelief. Against every law of history, they have stood against the Horde and lived. But Dmitry says nothing. He looks to the horizon, where Mamai's shadow disappears into the south. He knows this is not the end. The Horde is wounded, not dead. Others will come. Stronger, crueler. Yet something irreversible has happened here. The spell of fear has been broken. The Rus have learned that they can stand. That unity, not tribute, can shape destiny. As night falls over the dawn, the smoke of battle drifts upward, carrying the scent of sacrifice and birth. The field of sparrows has become a field of ghosts. And in their silence, a nation begins to rise. But fate is never finished. For in the ashes of Mamai's defeat, another power watches from the east. One that will return with vengeance and fire. The victory of Kulikovo may have freed Russia from fear, but freedom always comes with a price. Duel of faith and iron. The smoke still hangs above the dawn, gray as ash on the breath of the dying day. The field of Kulikovo lies quiet now, quiet in the way a wound quiets when it has bled enough. Broken shields, splintered lances, torn banners, all of it drifting in the wind, like the ghosts of what courage costs. And yet, amid the ruin, something unseen has shifted. For the first time in 2 centuries, the land of Rus has looked into the eyes of the Horde and not flinched. The fear that ruled generations has cracked, and through that crack, a new light leaks. But that light is fragile, because the steppe does not forget. The dawn after the battle breaks cold and hollow. Dmitry rides slowly through the field, his horse picking a careful path between the bodies of friend and foe alike. His armor is dented, His hands blistered raw. He stops where Parivat fell, the monk still seated, as if in prayer, his hands locked around the shaft of the broken lance. Dmitry dismounts, kneels in the mud, and whispers, "You rode without fear, I will rule without it." Around him, the survivors move like ghosts. They gather the wounded, dig graves, bind the dying with strips of banner cloth. There are no cheers here, only the quiet ritual of the living paying debt to the dead. Most people never knew this detail, that Dmitry ordered the burial of both sides, Horde and Rus alike, in shared ground. The steppe took their blood, he said, let the land keep their bones together. It was not mercy, it was acknowledgement. The field was not just his victory, it was his inheritance. Far to the south, Mamai rides like a shadow fleeing its own master. He has lost not just the battle, but the myth of invincibility. His horse stumbles on rocky ground, and he curses it, curses the men who ran, curses the name of Moscow. He rides toward the Crimea, toward his fortress by the sea, to rebuild, to reclaim. But the winds of the steppe are already whispering betrayal. The Horde is a river. When it weakens, it turns on itself, and on that current rides a new name, Tokhtamysh. You see, Tokhtamysh is no mere rival. He is a storm given shape, younger, bolder, blessed by Timur, the conqueror of Asia himself. And he sees Mamai's failure as invitation. By the time Mamai reaches his stronghold, his allies are gone. His mercenaries have taken his gold and fled. When he calls for his guards, none answer. The man who commanded empires now commands only silence. One night, as the sea hammers against the cliffs, the door of his tent opens, and Tokhtamysh steps inside. No words, no trial, only a nod. Steel flashes, and Mamai, the man who tried to rule Russia through fear, is swallowed by the same darkness he cast over it. Most people never knew this detail. Mamai's body was never found. Some say it was thrown into the sea. Others whisper it still rides across the steppe, cursed to wander until the last echo of his name fades. Back in Moscow, Dmitry's army returns home, fewer in number, heavier in soul. As they march through the city gates, the bells toll not in triumph, but remembrance. Mothers weep, children stare in awe at men who now look older than the earth dotted the cathedral. Dmitry kneels once again before Sergius of Radonezh. The monk's eyes glisten with pride and sorrow. You have broken the yoke, he says softly. But beware, my son, every victory breeds another chain. Dmitry nods, but his heart is restless. He has seen the price of unity, the graves at Kulikovo, the faces of boys who never grew old. And yet he knows the battle's meaning runs deeper than the dead. Russia has tasted itself, and found iron in its blood. The months pass, the snow returns, the Horde does not. Trade caravans grow scarce, tax collectors vanish, and for the first time, the land breathes without tribute. Dmitry sends envoys to the other princes, inviting them to gather under Moscow's banner, not by threat, but by example. Still, peace is not trust. Old rivalries stir like snakes in thawing ground. Some princes whisper that Dmitry's victory was luck, not strength. Others wonder how long the Horde will truly stay gone. And in the east, the steppe grows restless once more, because Tokhtamysh has done what Mamai could not. He has united the Golden Horde. The empire of the steppe rises again, sharp and silent, its armies reforged, its ambition reborn. And Tokhtamysh does not see Dmitry as a hero. He sees him as a challenge to a race. Spring of 1382. 2 years after Kulikovo, the people of Moscow wake to rumors of dust clouds far to the south. Traders speak of cities burning. Villages vanish overnight. The Horde is coming again. At first, no one believes it. Not after what they'd seen. Not after the victory that made them dream of freedom. But the truth spreads like fire through dry grass. Scouts return, or what's left of them. Tokhtamysh's army is vast, disciplined, and hungrier than Mamai's ever was. He carries not vengeance, but purpose. To remind the Rus that the Horde still owns their dawns and their sunsets. Dmitry calls his council once more. The same faces that once trembled in candlelight now bear the scars of war. They look to him for salvation. He tells them the truth. Our strength is not ready. Our walls are not high enough. Our allies are not yet brothers. He orders the people to evacuate the city, to scatter into forests and fields. He rides north to gather reinforcements. Moscow will have to stand without him. And it does. For 3 days, Tokhtamysh arrives like judgment. His riders surround the city, his catapults roar, and his archers turn the sky black once again. The city burns from the outer walls inward. The smell of smoke and flesh mingles with prayer. When his soldiers breach the gates, they find no prince to capture, no army to crush, only the faces of common men and women who refuse to kneel. For the first time, the horde meets defiance not from warriors, but from the people themselves. But courage cannot stop fire. By the fourth dawn, Moscow as Toktamish rides through its ruins, the wind tugging at his cloak. He sees what Mamai never did, the roots of something that will one day choke the steppe itself. He orders his men to leave the churches standing. Let them pray, he says coldly. A faith that survives flame will be easier to tax than to kill. And just like that, the yoke returns. Tribute flows east once more. The dream of freedom dies for now. But here's the shocking truth. Toktamish's victory is hollow. Because in the ashes of Moscow, something endures. A legend. A story whispered from father to son. From monk to soldier of a battle on the Don where men stood together. Not for gold or glory, but because they were done kneeling. And that story refuses to die. Within a generation, it becomes the foundation of a new idea, that Russia is not merely a collection of cities, but a soul born from struggle. Dmitry will live to see it only in part. He rebuilds Moscow, brick by brick, as if stitching a wound that refuses to close. He sends word to every corner of the land. The horde may burn our walls, but they cannot burn what we have learned. The chronicles will call him Donskoy, Dmitry of the Don, not for where he was born, but for where he chose to stand. And so, the legend grows. Still, there is one thing history seldom tells. On the night before his death, years later, Dmitry dreams of Kulikovo again. He stands in the mist, the field unscarred, the air cold and waiting. Perovit rides past him, face calm, eyes knowing. The monk smiles and says, "It was never about winning, Dmitry. It was about remembering who we are." Dmitry wakes before dawn, his heart heavy and still. Outside, Moscow sleeps rebuilt, reborn, unbroken. He smiles once, quietly, then closes his eyes for the last time. The echoes of his choice will ripple through centuries, through Ivan, through Peter, through every name carved in Russia's stone and blood. Because on that field by the Don, a people learned what every empire fears most. That unity born of sacrifice can outlast conquest itself. And though the horde would rise and fall, and rise again in new shapes, the memory of that morning of fog, of silence, of courage would outlive them all. The field opens, and the forest answers. The wind moves through the reeds of the dawn like a whisper that refuses to die. Seasons have changed, but the field of Kulikovo still breathes beneath the soil. Grass grows over bones. Birds nest in the sockets of rusted helms. What was once a slaughter has become a quiet cathedral made of earth and silence. Time has moved on. Empires have shifted. The horde has risen again, under Toktamish's iron hand. But the memory of Kulikovo lingers like smoke after lightning, unseen, yet impossible to forget. It begins again with the sound of hooves. Summer 1382, 2 years after the victory that should have ended fear forever. But fear has a way of finding its way home. Scouts ride hard from the south, their faces pale, dust caked in their hair. They bring the kind of news that makes the heart go still before the mind can understand. The horde is coming, they say. Not Mamai, another, stronger. The Kremlin bells toll before dawn. Moscow wakes to panic. Dmitry's counselors crowd his hall, their voices colliding like waves. Toktamish is no Mamai, one says. He carries Timur's fire, warns another. He comes not to punish, whispers a third, but to erase. Dmitry stands by the window, staring toward the horizon where the land meets the unseen. His reflection in the glass looks older than the years he's lived. The scars of Kulikovo run deeper than skin. Let him come, he says finally. We will see what remains of fear. But his heart, the same one that had once burned like iron, is heavy with something colder. Understanding. He knows this time, victory may not come from swords, but from survival itself. That night, the prince walks through the empty streets of Moscow. He watches the lamps flicker in doorways, where families pack what little they can carry. The city murmurs with prayer and grief. Dmitry feels every word like a blade. He passes the cathedral and stops before an icon. The face of St. George, slayer of the dragon. The paint is cracked, the gold leaf worn thin. For a moment, Dmitry wonders if the saint ever tired of fighting. If even dragons learn to rise again. He closes his eyes and whispers, if courage was enough, this land would already be free. When he opens them, the candles have burned low. The smoke coils upward, and for a heartbeat, he thinks he sees the face of Perovit in the wavering light, calm, silent, waiting. By dawn, Dmitry makes his decision. He gathers his commanders and speaks without pretense. We will not meet Tokhtamish on the field. Not yet. Moscow will not fall for pride. It is a bitter order. The same men who bled with him at Kulikovo now look at him as if they no longer know their prince. Retreat, one says, disbelief cracking his voice. Dmitry nods. Sometimes, to guard what is sacred, you must let it burn. And so, he sends the people north, families, priests, artisans, even his own kin. The streets of Moscow empty like veins drained of blood. Only the militia and a handful of defenders remain behind to hold the walls. He mounts his horse and turns north to rally reinforcements. Behind him, the city waits in the quiet before judgment. Tokhtamish arrives like thunder wrapped in silk. His banners stretch for miles, golden under the rising sun. His army is a vision of precision, disciplined, silent, merciless. He does not rage or shout. He simply moves, as if destiny itself is obeying him. When his scouts bring news that Moscow's gates are closed but its prince gone, he smiles faintly. Then we shall burn his shadow, he says. The siege begins at noon. For 3 days, fire rains upon the city. Arrows ignite rooftops. Stones shatter walls. The defenders fight until their blades dull, then fight with what remains. Planks, stones, their bare hands. Smoke thickens until the sky forgets it was ever blue. A group of townsfolk flee through hidden passages beneath the Kremlin, carrying icons and relics in their arms. Others choose to stay, kneeling in the streets, praying as the enemy climbs the walls. By the third night, the city glows red, like an open furnace. The bells of Moscow toll one last time, and then, silence. When Dmitry returns days later with his gathered forces, the smoke still rises. He rides through what used to be streets and finds only embers and the faint smell of ash mixed with rain. No cheers, no banners, only ruin. He dismounts near the Cathedral of the Assumption, or what's left of it. The roof has collapsed, the icons blackened. And yet, at the center of the floor, one candle still burns. A single flame trembling against the dark. He kneels before it, eyes hollow. You survived, he whispers. You always do. Most people never knew this detail. That when Moscow burned, its icons were melted into gold dust and hidden inside the foundation stones by the priests who stayed. Years later, when the cathedral was rebuilt, that same dust was mixed into its new paint. Even in ruin, faith was building itself back into the walls. Dmitry's army sets up camp outside the smoldering city. No one speaks of revenge. Not yet. They bury the dead and begin clearing the rubble. One night, as the men sit around the fires, Dmitry addresses them quietly. You think we lost, he says, staring into the flames. But hear me. The Horde took our city, not our soul. They burned wood and stone, not will. The men listen, eyes reflecting the firelight. He points toward the dark outline of the Kremlin. They thought we would never stand again after Kulikovo. We did. They think we'll never rebuild now. We will. He pauses. Because we are not made of victory. We are made of endurance. A murmur runs through the camp. Not cheers, but something deeper. A vow. The years that follow are slow, heavy, but full of quiet defiance. The people rebuild Moscow. Brick replaces wood. The new walls rise thicker, stronger. A fortress not of fear, but of memory. Dmitry sends word to the other princes once more. This time, they listen. The legend of Kulikovo has become more than a story. It has become a heartbeat. Parents tell it to their children. Priests whisper it over graves. The name Donskoy spreads across the land like a promise that even when fire takes everything, something sacred still remains. But here's the twist history hides. Dmitry never rebuilt the city for glory. He rebuilt it for the next war. He knew Tokhtamish's fire was not the end, it was the test. The Horde still ruled the horizon, but it no longer ruled the soul of the people. And that, Dmitry knew, was how empires die, not when their armies fall, but when their enemies stop fearing them. One autumn evening, years later, an old traveler reaches the rebuilt gates of Moscow. His cloak is tattered, his beard gray. He asks for shelter, claiming to have come from the far steppes. The gods allow him in. He kneels before the prince. Dmitry, older now, weary but still sharp. The traveler pulls from his cloak a single token, a golden insignia, tarnished by time. Dmitry recognizes it instantly. Mamai's emblem. Where did you find this? He asks. The man smiles faintly. By the sea, buried in the sand where the tide never stops coming. Dmitry closes his hand around it. Cold metal, old hatred, and something else, closure. He looks out the window at the city lights flickering through the mist and whispers, then, the field is finally quiet. But he is wrong. The field is never quiet. Because beyond the forests, beyond the rivers, history continues to turn its blade. The horde will fall, yes, crushed by its own storms. But from its ashes will rise new empires, new tyrants, new wars. And each time, somewhere deep within Russia's frozen heart, the echo of Kulikovo will awaken the sound of shields locking, of breath held before the charge, of men deciding once again that fear will not have the final word. So remember this. The Battle of Kulikovo was never about one victory. It was about awakening. A nation was not born that day. It was remembered, forged in mud, baptized in blood, and crowned not by conquest, but by endurance. And as long as that memory endures, the field will never truly sleep. After the thunder, what victory does and does not, may on the thunder has passed. But thunder never truly ends. It just rolls farther away, echoing in the distance until it becomes memory. The field of Kulikovo lies quiet now, beneath the weight of history. The wind sighs through grass grown over forgotten graves, and in that sigh, the world can almost still hear the clashing steel, the shouts, the prayers, the silence that followed. From that silence, something vast began to move, something slower than war, but far more permanent, the shape of a nation. The idea of Russia, it begins not with a sword, but with a hammer, the hammer of a mason, striking stone in the half-light of dawn. Moscow, blackened by Tokhtomysh's fire, rises again, brick by brick, tower by tower. Heartbeat by heartbeat. Men work without rest. Women carry water from the river and mix it with the ashes of the burned city. The mortar between the stones is made not only of sand and lime, but of lost. And at the center of it all stands Prince Dmitry Donskoy, watching. His face is older now, not in years, but in knowing. Every sound of rebuilding is both comfort and accusation. Every wall raised is a reminder of how easily walls fall. Still, he builds. Most people never knew this detail. The Kremlin that now defines Moscow's heart began in the years after the city's burning. Dmitry ordered it to be built from white limestone, not wood, saying, "If they burn us again, let them burn light itself." The new Moscow glows like a memory that refuses to dim. But power, once tasted, does not fade quietly. As Moscow rises, so too does its reach. The other princes of Tver, of Ryazan, of Nizhny Novgorod, watch uneasily as Dmitry's influence spreads. Once, he was just another ruler under the horde's yoke. Now, he is the man who defied it. And that is dangerous. Meetings that once ended with toasts now end in silence. Dmitry feels it. The distance between handshakes, the weight of every glance. The land that bled together at Kulikovo is starting to fracture once more. This time not from fear, but from ambition. Because victory changes men. It hardens them. It gives them the illusion that destiny answers only to their name. But here's the shocking truth. Victory is not freedom. It is a debt. A debt to the dead who believed that what they fought for would not be forgotten. Dmitry carries that debt like a shadow at night. He dreams of the field again. He walks through fog, hearing the faint ring of a bell in the distance. When he follows it, he finds not Perovit or his men, but the faceless thousands who never came home. Their armor glows faintly in the mist. Their eyes are empty. One voice, soft, almost childlike, asks him, "Was it worth it?" He cannot answer. When he wakes, the candle beside his bed has burned low. Its wax melted into shapes that look like rivers, the same rivers that divided the Rus long before they united. He knows what it means. The war may be over, but the work of holding a nation together has only begun. Meanwhile, far beyond the forests, the horde trembles. Tokhtomysh's victory over Moscow has won him no peace. His alliance with Timur, the conqueror of half the world, has soured. Timur grows jealous, suspicious. He sees in Tokhtomysh the same fire that once burned in his own youth, and in the deserts of Transoxiana, another storm brews. Timur's wrath is legend. He does not simply defeat his enemies. He erases them. When Tokhtomysh defies him, Timur marches north. Cities burned by the dozen. The horde's golden banners fall one by one. By the time the fires fade, the empire that once enslaved Rus is itself in ruins. The yoke is broken, not by sword, but by history's turning wheel. And so, the paradox unfolds. Russia's freedom is born not only from its courage, but from its enemies' collapse. Fate, it seems, writes its greatest victories in the ashes of others. Years pass. Dmitry grows older, but the weight of leadership never lightens. He travels across his lands, rebuilding, mediating, reminding princes that their survival depends not on rivalry, but on unity. He becomes less a ruler and more a shepherd, guiding, warning, pleading, and yet, the seeds of empire are already sprouting beneath his feet, because power follows unity, like shadow follows flame. The church, too, grows stronger. Monasteries rise across the land, symbols of the faith that bound men together on the field of Kulikovo. But with faith comes authority, and authority, like steel, can protect or pierce. Sergius of Radones has long since passed into legend, but his words echo still. Strength without humility becomes tyranny. Faith without mercy becomes fire. Dmitry remembers them, though fewer and fewer around him do. One evening, as the sun bleeds red over the walls of Moscow, a messenger arrives from the north, breathless, mud-streaked, trembling. The man kneels and whispers, "The horde has fallen to Timur." The room goes still. For a moment, no one knows how to feel. Relief, fear, triumph. Dmitry looks into the fading light and says only, "Then the world turns again." He knows what this means. The chains that once bound them are gone. But so is the order they provided. The land is free, and alone. Freedom is beautiful, but it is also terrifying. That night, he stands on the ramparts of the Kremlin. The city hums below, blacksmiths hammering, priests chanting, merchants shouting over stalls. Life has returned. He looks out toward the dark horizon, and in that horizon, he sees more than the steppe. He sees centuries unfolding. He sees new princes who will wear crowns of iron, new wars fought in the name of unity, new thrones built on the same bones that now sleep under Kulikovo's grass. He whispers to the wind, "If we forget why we stood, we will fall again." And the wind, as if remembering the battle, seems to answer, low, mournful, endless. But here's the twist. History hides. Dmitry's legacy will not end. With him when he dies in 1389, his son Vasily I inherits not only a kingdom, but an idea that Moscow is more than a city. It is destiny's center. That idea will grow. It will be passed from father to son, from ruler to ruler, until it becomes doctrine, and doctrine will become empire. The fire lit on the dawn will one day blaze across half the world, through Ivan the Great, through Ivan the Terrible, through the Tsars, and through the red banners that follow them centuries later. Each will claim to fulfill Dmitry's vision. Each will claim to defend what was born at Kulikovo. And yet, none will fully understand what it truly meant. Because the victory at Kulikovo was not about dominance. It was about defiance. Not about ruling others, but about refusing to be ruled. That is what Dmitry fought for. Not empire, but identity. And identity, once awakened, cannot be caged again. As the candle of his life burns low, Dmitry writes a final letter. No one knows to whom it was truly addressed. His son, his people, or history itself. It reads, "Remember the field. Remember the fog that hid us, and the fear that did not. Remember that unity forged in desperation is still unity. And when power tempts you to forget, go to the river and listen. The dawn still whispers the price we paid." He seals it with wax, presses his trembling hand against the emblem of Moscow, the horseman slaying the serpent, and closes his eyes. The next morning, the bells of the Kremlin toll, not for warning, but for farewell. The prince who defied the horde is gone. The man who gave Russia its first breath of freedom sleeps beneath the earth he fought to claim. But his story, his echo will not sleep, because every generation that follows will stand again, on its own Kulikovo, in one form or another, against invaders, against tyrants, against their own doubt. Each time, the ground will remember. Each time, the forest will answer. And each time, the wind over the dawn will carry the same whisper. Stand. Even if the world burns around you, stand.